All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hop and Brew School 2021. We're really excited to be here to share some knowledge and talk about some hops. And at any point in time, if you have questions, just throw it in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll go from there. We've got a few people with us today. I'm Landon Wyershausen to get started. I'm the regional sales manager for the South and I'm based out of Houston, Texas. We've got Joe Shanahan. He's up in the Midwest-ish area, somewhere up there. We've got Luke Bellew. He's actually in Yakima right now, but he hails from Canada. We've got Denny Kahn. He is Denny Kahn, so you know him. I think he's somewhere out in the boonies of Oregon right now. And we've got Michael Ferguson, and he is actually here with me in Houston. I'll kick it around the horn so y'all guys can kind of introduce yourselves a little bit further and go from there.
Hi guys, I'm Joe Shanahan, located in Toledo, Ohio. I'm a former professional brewer and home brewer from way back when. I've worked everywhere from Lagunitas, Chicago to small pubs throughout Chicagoland area in Wisconsin. But I'm excited, kind of gets me back to my grassroots of home brewing. So this will be a fun discussion.
My name is Michael James Martin Ferguson. They call me Mufasa. I've worked for a number of brewing companies as well. BJ's Restaurants Inc. was the last one I worked for, opened up 127 restaurants for them. Home brewing has always been a passion for me. And now I work with Landon, actually for Landon at Farm Boy Brew Shop here in Houston. But I've been around the block a few times when it comes to beer, so this is going to be fun.
Okay, if nobody else is going, I'm Denny Kahn. Let me see here. I've been a home brewer for 23 years, 583 batches. I've co-authored 3 books on homebrewing. I've been on the governing committee of the American Homebrewers Association for 15 years. I co-host and co-produce 2 podcasts, Experimental Brewing and The Brew Files. And as far as I know, I'm the only homebrewer ever to have a strain of yeast named after me.
Hey, good stuff. On my end, I'm Luke Bolger. I'm the Canadian sales director for Yakima Chief. I'm presently in Yakima, though. I'm based in Montreal. And fun fact, I did my first homebrew batch 10 years ago today. Facebook reminded me of it today. So I did a wheat beer 10 years ago. And I'm with the company since January 2018. I'm pretty happy to be with you, all of you people.
Awesome. Yeah, so we've got quite a few years of home brewing and other types of brewing experience spread out between us. So literally whatever questions you have, let us have it. We're going to be talking about some advanced products for home brewing today, mainly Cryo Hops. And we will also be talking about Cryo Pop, which is a new release that we had. Ways to use it, how to use it, best case scenarios for it. What you should expect from it, and just different things like that. Just to get started with Cryo Hops in general, I know there's always a lot of confusion when you say, hey, do you want this in cryo or T90? And a lot of people are like, hey, what's cryo? So it's, we'll just start there. Cryo is a concentrated pellet. Through a proprietary process, we freeze the hops, remove the vegetal matter from it. So we're left with just lupulin glands and just a tiny, tiny bit of vegetal matter that helps it form into a pellet. What this means is that the alpha on these hops are typically roughly double what you would normally find in a T90 pellet. And thus the usage of them should be used at about 50%, depending. We'll get a little bit further into that, but typically a 50% usage rate is kind of a good starting point for things. We produce cryo in a bunch of different varieties now. It seems like we get a new variety or two every year. You should be able to get it from your local homebrew supply shop. You can also order it through Yakima Chief website, but definitely local homebrew supply shops are going to be your go-to. You can stop in and and support them and learn a whole bunch of stuff along the way. Luke, what do you think about cryo, just the process in general?
It's giving amazing results for homebrewers. I don't know if there's a lot of homebrewers out there using it, but you know, where we got amazing products out there. I did a homebrew in December using exclusively Idaho 7 and Equinox, and I was pretty happy with the results. Equinox is an underdog in my own opinion. It's one of our best cryo brand, giving amazing results, super tropical, and the results between both cryo and T90s are pretty different. I'm suggesting for homebrewers to use cryo with a mix of T90s, not using maybe 100% cryo. It's always good to have a bit of bract when you're brewing, especially small batches, because if you're using cryo, 100% cryo, your final results will be good, but sometimes it's the flavors dropping a bit and it's making your beer a bit more drier. So I would suggest to use both T90s and cryo in your batch.
On the practical side of that too, you kind of have to, because you want to use T90s for bittering, because using cryo for bittering, in spite of the fact the alpha is immense, it's just a waste of what those hops do best. You know, so my usual strategy is to use T90s for bittering and any early additions, and save the cryo for the late additions and the dry hops. And you might have seen me chuckle when Landon was talking about using 50% as much cryo as other hops. I generally use about 200% as much cryo as other hops, because I love what they do and I really want that punch to happen.
You know, I'm of the philosophy to use a nice, clean hop at the beginning. You know, something like Magnum or something like that, because really you want to develop your flavor, your aromas and everything in later additions. And if you want to save vegetation, you're going to use a high alpha at the beginning just to get your baseline bitter. And then you're going to want to go into all your flavor, aroma, and then your dry hopping. And then of course your, you know, with all the big, you know, hazies out there, the biotransformation thing, which a lot of people don't really know what that means. So, maybe you should probably say something about that. Luke, I noticed that you have that wonderful Canadian accent that my wife used to have, but her father still does. So if you would just kind of like talk a little bit about that biotransformation, because I think that you know, the school is out on what it actually does. There's a lot of arguments of what's going on. Denny might want to chime in on that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm from Montreal, so that's why I'm French Canadian. So that's why I have a beautiful accent. And but yeah, biotransformations. It's all about, you know, research that suggests that high levels of monoterpenes, alcohols, and polyfunctional tiols in the work stream can create the condition necessary for the yeast metabolism of derived compounds, otherwise known as biotransformation. So that's why we're using those hops are really helpful for biotransformation. What about you? What do you think, guys? Joe, Landon?
I think the biggest takeaway is that biotransformation, it's through the process of brewing, you know, both with heat, fermentation, CO2, there's just a lot of things occurring that can blow off flavor and aroma. Biotransformation and the data points we're going to highlight here in a bit kind of showcase what hops will stay in solution and translate into your finished product, into the bottle. So when you're pouring it, you're getting full use out of the hops. Cryo helps with that immensely. So
Yeah, I think you hit on a really good point there, Joe. Obviously, like the survivable compounds in hops and how they translate through to the finished beer are very important, especially with the research we've been doing over the last few years. For cryo, for me is and in the biotransformation part of it, because I will tell you, I was not a big fan of hazy IPAs in the very beginning. It just seemed like it just didn't feel right. It was against the we had been doing for years and years and years as far as what we've been told about dry hopping. I've definitely come around on that because I've realized that what you're doing during the biotransformation is you're really minimizing the potential off notes that you could find, but you're maximizing your actual like fruity compounds, your flavor component hop pounds that you're really, really looking for. So it's just about kind of like minimizing the negative and then accentuating the positive, which when Luke was talking about the Equinaut hops, that's exactly what the cryo process does, man. It really makes it pop when it goes through that cryo process. And it's beautiful. And I think it's a very underutilized hop across the entire industry.
I like to think of it as the cryo process is like a bandpass filter. Being a former engineer, I often equate things to my engineering background. And a bandpass filter, basically what that does is lower the bad stuff and raise the good stuff, right? By transforming it to a different frequency. And that's what cryo does. It just gives you the best stuff. And here at the home brew shop, I notice only about 30% of our orders use the cryo. And I think more people should, right? I mean, I think they look at the price and they say, oh, wait, this costs twice as much. But you're going to get more than twice the value out of these cryo hops when you use them for dry hopping. We use them for, at end of boil, flame out, whirlpool, and especially during the biotransformation phase at high Kreuzen.
And the
I
fun
also
thing,
too.
yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
just a quick addition. You're gonna get more beer at the end also, so that's a good thing. And usually usually home brewers are pretty happy. They have like maybe a few more bottles, so that's good.
That's exactly what I was about to say is using less cryo, but to get more out of it as you would T90s will get you more bottles of beer in the end or more out of your keg. So, and that's crucial when you got something that's tasting very good. So.
Well, I guess I'm just the odd man out here as usual. It's a freaking hobby, guys. If I want more beer, I'll toss in a little bit of extra grain and make an extra half gallon, which is what I do, to account for losses. To me, as long as I can afford it, the cost is not really an issue. I don't have a board of directors to satisfy. I'm not trying to make money on this. I'm doing it for my own enjoyment and that of those of my friends who drink the beer that I make. And continuing in the odd man out vein, I'm not a fan of biotransformation, and I have never had a hazy IPA that I like. I've had some that I don't dislike as much as others, but the texture, the mouthfeel of them just totally turns me off. I find them astringent and gritty. And after I have a hazy IPA, I feel like I need to drink a West Coast IPA to wash my mouth out. Personally, I don't really care about the biotransformation qualities of cryo hops. I use them because I get intense, clean, forward flavors that are really complementing the kinds of beers that I like to make. Now, if you like hazy IPAs and you like biotransformation, you guys go ahead and do that. If you want to send me one, sure, I'll be happy to try it. Maybe I'll like yours. I think that when I first heard about the Cryopop, for instance, they sent me a sample of some beers that were made for them, and sat down with my wife. We opened them up, tried them, and it's like, yeah, these are better than other hazy IPAs that I've had. But that's enough for me. Thanks.
I guess that's a little bit of a lead in into Cryo Pop as well. But before we kind of move on to that, we'll still be talking about the Cryo Hops as well. I know we've got people out there that have questions, so hit us up. That's what we're here for. Anything and everything that you might have a question on, just let us know. So we've said Cryo Pop a few times without any kind of like background on like, hey, what's Cryo Pop? Cryo Pop is basically, it's a culmination of research that we've been doing for the last several years on these survivable compounds, what we call them. They're beer soluble, survivable compounds that we can actually test for in the hop cone themselves and in the hop oil fraction. And then they also can be tested for in the finished beer so that we know that they are making it from the very beginning to the very end. The interesting thing about these handful of compounds that we've identified, there's about 7 to 10, I think, is what we kind of monitor. The interesting thing about these compounds is they're found in very small amounts in the actual oil fraction. We're talking like parts per million, or sorry, parts per billion in a lot of cases. Human senses, in a lot of cases, we're very sensitive to some of these compounds, and we can detect them in parts per trillion. So it really doesn't take a whole lot to really affect, the overall beer itself. So back in, 2018, 2019, we started testing every lot that came through for these compounds specifically. It took, some equipment upgrades through our lab to be able to detect these very small amounts of particles in very, very, very small concentrations. And we started logging all those. And basically, we kind of saw patterns within certain varieties where some have more of these survivable compounds than others. And it really did start hinting towards, the sensory effect of those hops at the end. Like, oh, this is high in geraniol. Maybe that's why it tastes the way it does. Or it's high in linalool. That's why I get so much citrus flavor out of it, and different things like that. So Cryopop is essentially a blend of several different varieties that we have found to be high in these specific compounds. Not just variety specific overall, but really lot specific. Where it comes from can impact that as well. So what we've done is we've basically put this blend together to maximize the total survivable compounds inside the beer itself, or inside the blend itself, to give you more pop, which is why it's called Cryo Pop. What we've got on the screen right now is what we call it the Survivables Chart. Just pretty much everybody, I guess, calls it the Survivables Chart. This is basically the data that we've gotten from testing. This is the most up-to-date chart that we have. And you can see Cryopop Blend is up there right next to Centennial. Before we start really digging into this chart, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions, this chart is not an indication on which hop is better than another one, just outright. Nobody is going to say that Cascade is not a great hop because it's on the lower end of this value. What it does hint at is better ways to utilize these varieties throughout your brewing process and throughout your recipe development. So yeah, I guess Denny, you've got 500 and how many batches under you, and probably a billion more recipes. What do you say about recipe development?
583 so far. It's I've recently used this chart on my last batch of beer. Actually, it was like a 12-gallon batch that I split in half. I took the information in this graph, looked at the varieties of hops that I had on hand, and planned when to use those hops in my brew based on that chart there. In one of those batches, I dry hopped it with 2 ounces of Cryo Pop, and in the other one, I dry hopped with 1 ounce each of Cryo Centennial and Cryo Cascade, right? So much for the 50% as much rule. And I am just thrilled with both of those beers, especially the stuff from my late hop additions based on this chart. I really loaded up from 20 minutes on down, and man, the flavors are present and well defined and crisp. I'm looking forward to working with this more. Like I said, I just used a bunch of the hops that I had on hand. I'm looking forward to now using this chart to define some of my future hop purchases and starting to play around with different combos and stuff. But this information just really worked for me really well.
Well, I think a chart like this is something that homebrewers need to see a lot more of, so that they could get a concept of what the cryo hop actually does. When we made our beer here, we made a tiki hazy IPA. Sorry, Denny.
You got to do what you got to do, man.
Right. So we used the Cryo Pop along with some other ones. Since it was tiki, we used some Sabro for the coconut and some different things, and the Cryo Pop during high krausen, as well as at the end of the boil and dry hopping and just regular dry hopping. And I have to tell you, it might have been the best hazy IPA I have ever had. And we made it here with the Cryo Pop in the shop on the Grain Father. So it was truly amazing. And I'm a real fan of the Cryo Pop simply because that flavor profile is amazing. And even though it was a hazy, there was no grittiness. It was smooth. The fruit value that came through in the end was amazing. And the amazing part was it lasted the entire keg. I've had hop creep with a number of different hops that I have used, and I've had this down to the very end of that keg. It was smooth and wonderful. A month and a half later, hazes usually don't last that long, as it was when we first made it. So I'm a real fan of cryo hops in general, and Cryo Pop in particular.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the first time I saw cryo hops. It was a hop and brew school maybe 6 years ago, something like that. They had this one little hand-built machine sitting in a room. We weren't allowed to take pictures of it or to even talk to anybody else about it after we, I mean, it was just like all this top secret stuff. And I was just blown away by the technology, even though at that point there were no beers to try with it. And it really panned out. I'm just going to say to all you homebrewers who are out there watching this thing, if you have not tried cryo hops and you like IPAs, you are really doing yourself a disservice by not getting a hold of some and getting them into your next brew. Because when it comes to IPA, this is the way to go.
Is that a Star Wars reference? This is the way.
Yeah, this is it.
These are the cryo you've been looking
for. The Mandalorian.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the next time you see regular T90, just say, these are not the hops I've been looking for.
Absolutely. I have to tell you that when we do sell the cryo, and I'm surprised that we just don't sell more, because as much as people are dry hopping their beers with 8 and 9 ounces of Citra and Mosaic, I mean, they're just like throwing hops after hops in there. A couple of and I don't know if you need to do that. I think that like you said, 2 ounces of some cryo in the dry hop, and you're going to get like the performance of those 8 different hops. It also turns out that some of that stuff, I mean, in the T90s, you just don't get the same survivability as you get with the cryo. So you're kind of just wasting hops.
Well, and when you start throwing 8 or 9 ounces in there, you're running up against the shell hammer limit of diminishing returns, right?
Absolutely.
So by eliminating all that bract from the cryo hops, then you can get what you're looking for with less hops and not have to worry about all that bract reabsorbing the oils and all the stuff like that.
Absolutely. So I try to I'm trying to push a little bit more of the cryo onto onto the people, but they're it's hard. I'm not sure if they just don't know about it or nobody's explained it to them. But at some point, I think that we're going to have to start stocking a whole lot more cryo, because people are going to find out, they're just going to catch on at some point. They're going to go, why haven't I been doing this the whole time?
Let's face it, homebrewers are the cheapest people in the world, right? We've all been homebrewers. We know that, right, man? See, you're laughing because it's true, right?
It's true. It's true.
So in order for homebrewers to spend more money, they have to know that they're getting a return on their investment. And we can do that. I mean, again, all you guys out there, I urge you to try it, because we can talk until we're blue in the face, but until you try them, you're not going to realize just how worthwhile they are and how worth that little bit of extra money they are. It's one of those things that you have to experience to believe.
Yeah, I tried. I think I'm starting to win some people over with the cryo, but basically the way I win them over is like I say, well, this is really twice the hop of the T90, right? Which is true, but that's not the big point of cryo hops. I mean, the point is that not only is there less vegetation, but they work so much better for the T90. So I mean, just trying to get it across. But if you could appeal to their cheapness, you might be able to get through. Or do a promotion. Say, if you don't actually like these cryo hops better, come back and I'll give you your money back for them.
We're inviting all those cheap homebrewers to come visit us at HomebrewCon. We're giving away free samples of cryo hops. So that's
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, you always have. I was doing my podcast right across from your booth the last time there was a real homebrew con, and there was a huge line there of people waiting for samples. And I think that that's really the way to do it. I mean, guys just have to try it to see.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Another thing too another thing I wanted to point out too about the Cryopop and Cryopop specifically is, cryo plays well with others. Feel free to use it in different styles of beer. Feel free to use it in with different hop combos. Don't feel like you have to use cryo and only brew hazy IPAs or only brew West Coast style IPAs, double IPAs. I mean, Cryopop, the whole thing can be used in numerous beer styles. So don't let it hinder your creativity.
So let's talk about that some, Joe, because I have not really played with them in anything other than IPA. What are some stuff? I mean, would like cryo work in a porter?
I guess it depends on what you're going for in that porter.
Right.
For instance, we had some discussion on, making like tropical stouts and throwing Sabro in it and HBC 472 in tandem just to get that coconut, vanilla, oak, really just make this crazy chocolate tropical stout. I think using a pinch of cryo dry hop in that, I mean, we're not talking hopping it like an IPA, but just hopping it in small amounts just to amplify those characters would be freaking awesome, and using even cryo in that as just a small little half an ounce dose would be great in the end. So
I think a lot of people are missing out on dry hopping things that aren't normally dry hopped.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that just by, you're making a pale ale, what the hell? Dry hop it with some cryo cascade or maybe something fruitier, maybe some cryo mosaic or cryo citra. I mean, just play. I mean, that's what we do as homebrewers, right? We play, we experiment, play with it, pick it, run with it.
We're not going to have 500 gallons of beer to dump out if it turns out crappy,
For beer boiled brats.
Yeah, right, man. I have a question that was put to me when I started going out and telling people about this event today. Several people said to me, why no cryo Chinook? are there and I just missed it? Or if not, why not?
They exist.
Yeah, they are.
Do they really? Because I love Chinook for finishing hops and dry hops, and I guess I've just never run across the Cryo Chinook.
I would
There's
say
also Cryo Columbus for
Oh, you're
at least
kidding.
right now for those who want to
Really?
make some dank,
so.
crazy.
Really cool fun fact about Cryo Columbus is that we typically choose a lot of Columbus that is early pick, so that it is not necessarily focused on the alpha, so that we can minimize OG in it. So it really gives you that like old school dank Columbus, and it's in cryo format, and it is beautiful. It is really awesome. And it's just like one of those like not hidden secrets that's right in front of everybody, that we wish that everybody would jump into. But yeah, I mean, there's all kinds. I would say, as far as availability of them, it's just based on demand. The more that you ask your suppliers for them, the more the distributors pick them up, and then the homebrew shops can buy from that. That's how you get that stuff. And then obviously you can order it direct through YCH as well, but just ask for it.
I'm gonna have to do.
We have the Cryo Chinook here, at Farm Boy.
Well, my most famous recipe that thousands and thousands of homebrewers have brewed over the years is a rye IPA that's kind of based on Columbus and Mount Hood, right? I would love to get a hold of some Cryo Columbus to try that recipe, man. So I will seek them out, believe me.
Yeah, they're out there for sure.
All right. That sounds great.
Yeah, it's like a kickback to the just old school West Coast IPA days before Columbus really got more focused on as an alpha hop, an alpha variety.
Back when beer was good, right?
Wow.
Back in the day. Hey,
man, us old guys can have an attitude like that.
I understand completely. At the last homebrew con I was at, one of my first panels up on the screen was an old school stick shift, and it said millennial anti-theft device. So
I love it.
I perfectly understand. I'm a real fan of pale ales. I've always been a fan of pale ales, and I always wanted more flavor hops in a pale ale. So I'm not opposed to making pale ales with a lot of flavor, aroma, and dry hopping in it, because I think that just enhances the 3 hop schedule that most pale ales have. Right. And that just brings out all the stuff that you put in before it. And, you can still use the Cascade, you can still use the Columbus, you can still use the Chinook. So, I mean, it's a wonderful thing. And cryo is the way to go with that. And I'm just urging so many of you homebrewers out there just to, walk into your favorite homebrew shop, farmboybrewshop.com, and, ask, for these different cryo hops and use them, play with them, experiment with them, and you're going to get some amazing results, and you're going to start bringing in metals that you didn't know you could get.
We just put on the chat a link showing all the homebrew hop options, so you'll see all the cryo brands available for homebrewers.
And I think, talking about creativity and using imagination and everything, like one of my favorite things to do as a homebrewer are smash beers when new products come out. And it's like the anti-creative thing, it's such a simple recipe, but you can really figure out what that hop is going to give you. I just encourage all the homebrewers out there to love the smash beers. There's really good ones out there, but man, like when you start pairing up the right combinations, you can turn some things around. Part of the research with the Cryopop was also synergistic compounds. We found that a lot of these survivable compounds tend to be synergistic with each other, especially during the fermentation process. So if you're able to, what we call load the wort stream up with these survivable compounds by using it in late additions and whirlpools, and even in mid-ferm dry hop, getting those compounds in and actually fermenting them together. And if you go to the the cryopopblend.com and download the Compounds Handbook, Survivable Compounds Handbook. It's got all the research in there, and it's just a pamphlet. It's not like it's a really dense white paper or anything like that, but you can kind of see all of the fun things that we've been finding out about these compounds over the last few years. But really, it's just about providing a base with the Cryopop and then layering other things on top of it. Because it is a blend, it's going to give you a lot more depth of character, in my opinion, than just a single variety. But it's also going to make those other varieties stand out a little bit more, which is where that pop comes from as well. So it gives you that flavor pop, but it also makes other varieties pop. And I will say, for me, my favorite combination, and it doesn't include Cryopop yet, it should. My favorite combination of hops right now is Talus Equinox, hands down.
Well, I mean, we sell enough Mosaic and Citra to, I don't know, have our own little section at Yakima Chief, I'm pretty sure. But, there's so many other hops out there that people just need to, figure out how to use. And so there's no Talus in Cryo, right? So I guess you've got to stay with the vegetation.
Not yet, but I'm sure it's probably not too far away.
Yeah, it's in the works.
Yeah, Denny, have you used that combination, Talus and Equinox?
No, not those two together. I used quite a bit of Talus just as it was getting named and released. I used it back, when it was a number, and then I got a hold of a bunch just as it was being released, and I've used that. That's a very interesting hop. It took me a while to figure out how to use it in a way that I liked, because of there's coconut, there's lime, there's cedar, there's all this stuff, and at first it's kind of off-putting, but once I brewed a couple batches with it and figured out what I wanted to do with it, which was take a wild stab and see what the hell happened, that I came to really appreciate it. But again, I think that early on I was using too much of it, trying to learn what it was, and that is one that I think really benefits with the blend. Never considered Equinox with it, but I'll have to give that a shot. I've got both in the freezer.
That's a great point. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
I'm sorry. I just think that now with the real homebrew challenge is to get the combination of hops that creates something new, right? Because we know what's out there commercially. We know what a lot of people are making clones of, but I think that the basis of homebrewing is experimentation, and that we should try to figure out which combos that we want to do. And by going to your website and downloading that, the Survivables Handbook and things like that, you might be able to get a hint of what you really want to have in an end product. You won't know, of course, until you make it.
Right.
But that's part of the whole thing. Keep copious notes, find out what you liked, find out what you didn't like about it, and tweak it next time until you get to that perfect beer that you've never tasted before.
And
yeah, I think that's a great point, because some of the hops that are out there, they don't necessarily translate well as single hops. They're not the next Centennial or Simcoe, where those are just phenomenal as single hop beers, or can produce single hop beers. Things like Sabro can be polarizing. It's an awesome hop when used correctly. So unless you're a huge coconut guy and you're really going for that, maybe not go for a single hop smashed IPA of Sabro, but in tandem with other things at small percentages, you'll find a combo where without it, you would just have something missing. With it, you just made an absolute game-changing beer. So
yeah, I brewed an American Pale Ale with Talus, only Talus, and it was amazing. So because the coconut is less present in Talus than Sabro. Right. And it was like super floral, and everyone loved it. And it stays good, and it stayed good for like 3 or 4 months. So I was pretty happy with the results.
I think we can all agree that homebrewers practice restraint extremely well.
No,
not at all.
Wait, sorry, I was.
Oh, looks like we lost
Then-
Denny.
Then he
Did we
froze.
lose Denny?
Yeah.
He got pretty excited about that one. Kind of freaked
Yeah.
his
I
internet
know.
out.
Your joke. Your joke froze him.
That's too bad. And he said it might happen. So, but we have a great series of cryo hops here, and I noticed one thing very important. Like, I was never a complete fan of Simcoe until I tried Cryo Simcoe. It's definitely less catty, and if used correctly, as Simcoe is one of those things that I have to blend with something for my personal taste. I can't just have a single hop Simcoe beer. I just can't. It just is not pleasant to me. But when used with other hops, it does play well with others. So it's a good one. And we have the Cryo Simcoe as well. So that's an important addition. All you homebrewers really need to know that you could just walk into your local homebrew shop, ask for the Cryo, and start using it now, because you will find a difference. Less vegetation is always good. Denny, you back? Is he back?
Yeah. Just like I warned you. And I think it goes again back to what Luke or Joe was saying earlier about how an all cryo beer can be a bit disappointing or different than what you're used to. I mean, I started using them that way when I first tried them, and that's exactly what I found. So I started kind of like using some of the American Nobles, which is the other side of cryo hop, in with the cryo hop, and kind of creating my own lupulin to vegetation ratios in the hops that I was using and stuff like that. And that really brought out a lot more flavor in these hops.
Yeah, I guess I'd never really thought about using the American Noble on the other side of it, and blending it back in like that. That's a good point.
It's a really interesting project, man, and I have not come up with any definite, oh yeah, use this much of this and this much of this, but it's a great experiment to play around with.
Well, and that's why we homebrew, because we like to experiment, right?
That's right. And experimentation does not mean putting as much crazy shit as you can find into a beer.
You sure? I don't know. I could ask probably 8 out of 10 guys, and they would say the opposite.
Yeah, well, they're wrong. And unless
yeah.
they agree with me, they're wrong.
Yeah. Well, what are you, German trained?
No, I'm old fart trained.
Okay, I understand that completely.
Yeah.
That's there are a lot of people. I mean, Landon says don't second guess the recipes, but we get recipes that come in, and it's like you see, like, all the hops that they're using. It's like unimaginative, and then they've got maybe a grain bill with 12 different grains, which is kind of ridiculous. So I really would like to have these people come into the shop so I can talk to them about, well, have you tried these combinations, or have you thought about adding some other things to make these hops more interesting? Because you can elevate something that you like in a hop by using other hops to showcase it. But it does take experimentation, and there are some people that come in here and throw everything at their beer glass to see if it works. And hopefully they come up with some good beers eventually. It's like having 100 monkeys on typewriters. One of them's going to come up with the Constitution, right? So
to kind of look at that survivable chart again as well, if it's possible to pull back up, you'll kind of see that there are certain varieties that have, I'll kind of point it out. So like you look at Laurel and it's got a ton of linalool, why would you necessarily throw in a Willamette that has, although smaller, but still that's the majority of what's there? It's kind of like looking at just looking at this chart and looking at what's Geraniol, linalool. First off, what flavors are they bringing to the table, but finding out the different combinations that way too. This chart's kind of there to help guide that as well, rather than doubling down on like Autanum and Centennial. Yes, their ratios are drastically smaller, but you'll see the majority being methyl geraniate. You may as well use one or the other kind of thing. So
Yeah, it's about impact, right? You want the
Yes.
biggest impact that you can get in the beer with the least amount to have to add. It's like, yes, you can get the same linalool content by adding so much cascade to try to get it to that citra level, but it just doesn't make any sense if that's what you're trying to do. So on a recipe formulation level, like just kind of standing back and looking at it, and that's why this chart is so awesome, is it gives you those numbers to kind of to poke around at. One thing else to say about this chart is that Centennial is way high on the Survivables chart. The kind of the thing to think about it though is that a huge majority of that is methyl geranate, which is the least soluble of these compounds. So when you take that out, it really kind of drops back in line. It's still going to be on the high end of things. This chart also tells you the amount of these compounds, but not necessarily the quality of these compounds as well. So there are a few little things in the research that, you know, you can't just look at this chart and say, oh, this is it completely. There are some things that you have to kind of look at as well. But a very extremely good chart. I've pretty much been in love with this thing since it came out. So
yeah,
now I know that I'm not putting Azaka at the boil, only to dry up.
I had somebody came to the shop and brought a keg when we still had the Katie shop open, and it was 100% laurel because that's what he had hanging around. And I got to tell you, it was like chewing on lime rind. It was really kind of off-putting. So some of these things just can't be by themselves. I think you really need to have that true combo, you know, to get those flavors right. And this chart kind of hints to what those combos should be. Of course, once again, you don't know until you try.
yeah, it's just about making, you know, good decisions, I guess, in your recipe formulation. You know, if you're picking a flavor or two to go after and using this chart, knowing that, you know, linalool is going to be more citrus oriented, geraniol is typically a little bit more grapefruit, floral, you know, and there's you know, trying to layer those things together. That's basically what you're trying to do. Why would you throw you know, citra and laurel in together, and you're just kind of doubling the linalool content, but could you get too much of it? Do you need some more balance there? Maybe you go with something that, you know, has a lower linalool content, but a higher geraniol content. So why not like a talus, you know, instead? And being able to combine those flavors together and basically just using this chart to kind of work backwards and get to what you're trying to achieve.
If you're ever unsure about what to do or how to, you know, what hops to use in your next batch of beer, if you're really just kind of like creatively burnt out, this thing I think just helps steer it back into place to get you fired up again and figure out, man, I haven't done this combination before, but looking at this chart, I think this is a safe choice to ultimately give me a successful beer rather than just throw something in and then you find out, oh, it's bland, it's trite, it's unoriginal. This kind of helps steer back creativity, I think. At least for me, it did. So.
And I'd say, you know, kind of where Cryopop fits in, you know, it can be a single hop blend. We really say that, you know, 20 to 40% in just about any IPA is going to elevate the overall impact of your other varieties that you have in there, because it's made to be a very balanced blend across these compounds that we're searching for. So it just adds the depth of character and helps to kind of lift up the other varieties that are around it.
You know, if you're a home brewer, you should never be at wit's end when it comes to creativity. I mean, sometimes you're bound by, you know, economics. Sometimes you're bound by, I've got all this grain, I've got all these hops, now I got to make something. But even if that's the case, you could use this chart to help you see what you have and what you could do with what's you know, on the shelf in there. You know, I'm okay with smash beers, but I really like the combination of hops. I've always been a hop flavor and hop aroma guy over hop bitterness for bitterness sake. Not to say that there aren't some West Coast IPAs that I just love, but I really, really prefer that whole flavor aroma thing over the bitterness. I think the bitterness needs to be balanced, and the flavor aroma could be as big as you want it to be, as far as I'm concerned. I was really happy that a lot of homebrewers started making West Coast style IPAs, but putting these late addition hops in there so that you have all these wonderful fruity flavors that are and aromas that go along with that bitterness up front. So it's keep on experimenting, man. And if you're in the neighborhood and you got some beer, come on by Farm Boy.
So we had a question in the Q&A, and they were asking about hop extracts. And I was wondering if we would get a question about a hop extracts, because we really haven't talked about them, and it is somewhat of an advanced product. Joe, what do you feel about hop extracts on the homebrew level?
I think it can be a dangerous game because it can be overdone pretty simply. I think it would be very difficult to have dialed into where you want it. I can't say I'm a big fan on the homebrew level of using it. It's just a little goes a long way. Unless Denny or Mike, you guys have used it before with success. That's my take.
It's virtually a moot point because it's so hard to find in homebrew quantities that almost no one has it to use it anyway,
Yeah.
I came home from one of the hop and brew schools with a little can of hop extract that they'd handed out as samples, and it was good for 500 gallons of beer. Right? It's like, okay, so it's like I open this can, I take out like a pinhead worth, put it in my 5-gallon batch and throw the rest away. Is that, so I would say that, hop extract might be worthwhile on a homebrew level, but until we can get a hold of it more easily to actually try it and experiment with it, it's, just kind of a crapshoot and an unknown.
Yeah, we sell two types here. Mainly when I sell it is when people are trying to do clones of something commercially. And so we do like Pliny, obviously, Maharaja and all these other ones, even Committed from BJ's, all use these hop extracts. And so if you're going to make a clone of something like that, then it comes in handy. We sell the 5 milliliter syringes, which is basically 10 IBU per gallon per batch per milliliter, right? So so it is available in homebrew quantities, just not a lot of places have it.
I would say it's not on homebrew quantities because it's very limited varieties on what you can find on the homebrew level for sure. True. But I would say it's just about the dosing. It's a very concentrated product, and it can be tough to use if you're not using it in the right ways. It needs to be on hot side. So that it can fully incorporate. It needs a good amount of agitation so that it doesn't just stick to the sides of the kettle and create a mess, so that you're actually getting the utilization from it. So I'm not a fan on the homebrew level of using it. On commercial level, it's great, but on homebrew level, it can be very difficult. And I would say it's honestly, if you're trying to, get the sort of impact from the extract, you're better off using cryo, in my opinion. Easier to use it just like T90s essentially. It doesn't affect your process. You don't have to change it at all. You just kind of keep doing what you're doing and kind of go from there. And I guess like another advanced product that we really haven't talked about that is in the market right now are just terpenes. You find terpene oils and stuff everywhere. I think the major thing about terpene oil is that it's oil and it doesn't dissolve well. So it's very hard to incorporate and can be very tough to use, just like the extracts are. Does anybody else have any thoughts about terpenes or just CO2 extract and some of these other advanced products?
I had a chance to use some terpenes, some Columbus terpenes, as a matter of fact. A listener of our podcast was producing them himself and sent some to Drew and me to try. And I had just kegged a batch of my Rye Ipa. It was like, a little bottle about like that, not that big around. And I thought, what the hell? This smells good. I'll just pour it in there. Was that a mistake? And it's not because the terpenes he produced were bad or there was anything wrong with them. It was just that, Yeah, I forgot my old rule of add and sample and then see if you need to add more, right? And so I just dumped that whole thing in there and it was absolutely disgusting. But the terpenes themselves were really interesting and showed a lot of promise. But again, it's kind of like going back to the extracts. You have to learn how to use them. You know, it's a whole new ball game. But you know, I mean, I'd like to hear what you guys have what your experience with them has been.
Yeah, you have to use it in really, really small amounts.
Yeah, I guess.
I got the commercial brewers that are using it, but it's like small bottles like this, and they're using it in like full batches. So it's almost unusable on a homebrew scale. From what I'm seeing and I'm hearing. Yeah.
It's more headache, and you know, cryo is definitely a cold side, you know, product that we have. And I wouldn't want someone to waste it in the kettle, but it is concentrated lupulin. If you really wanted a jolt of some IBUs heavy, maybe Whirlpool would be about the latest or the earliest I would go in the brewing process. It gets some flavor carryover, but it would also spike some IBUs way up. That would be about the earliest I would go with that product to kind of get the best bang for your buck in terms of steering away from extract, but getting something more out of your hops, I guess. That's my biggest tidbit to investigate, but it is concentrated lupulin and a little goes a long way.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're getting close to the hour time limit here. You know, are there any other questions out there? Like, hit us up while we're here, you know, and so we can answer everything for you. Okay, we've just got one. Just add to the question, homebrew package is 1 mil and both Chinook and Eldorado are available. Okay. Gotcha. So. All right, so if there's any other questions out there, let us have it. Otherwise, we're just going to sit here and keep talking until the time's up. You've been warned. Denny is not muted his mic yet.
Oh,
That's okay. I like hearing Denny, man. He's always got something interesting to say. Not unlike
that's very
Drew.
kind of you. That's why Drew and I work so well together. We're neither one of us is afraid to express our opinions, and they very seldom.
No, definitely not afraid to express opinions, and that's and that's very brewer-like, you know, both professionally and homebrew. What other products do you have that we could start doing? I mean, I know that there's some things that you know, certain states are doing because things are legal in those states and stuff like that. But I mean, on the homebrew scale, are there any additives, any other things that you're working on that might work for us?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a few things in the works.
Anything you could talk about?
Nope.
Not really. Not yet. Stay tuned for more.
Another product though that Denny brought up that I guess I'd like to talk more about was the American Noble hops. That is kind of the offshoot of Cryo. I don't think they've got enough looks at. I think it's really, really cool the fact that you can get a low alpha acid mosaic or low alpha acid citra. So you're kind of, when you're brewing those Pilsners, brewing those Kolsch's, you're using American hops, but in low alpha quantity, like your typical Saaz. So I don't know, I think it just kind of makes a really complex lager, wit, whatever you want. I think those are also really, really cool products that homebrewers should investigate more of.
Do you know if that's what Bellbreaker is using in their Pilsner?
Good question.
Know.
I'm going at the end of the day today. I'll ask them.
Please, because I just had a chance to experience their Pils for the first time, and it blew me away completely because it is so clean and crisp and so traditional German Pils like. But the first thing that you get off of it is a big hit of blueberry, from the Mosaic hops, right? It's Simcoe, Laurel, and Mosaic in their Pilsner.
Oh,
And
we've
it
got
is-
one more question, just real quick, and then
Okay.
we're going to have to wrap it up. But it says, did the extended heat wave impact the hop quantity that will be available to homebrewers? Nope. You'll still be able to get everything that you need. The hop crops are looking pretty solid. So we're nothing catastrophic. But with that, I want to thank everybody that has joined today. And if you'll have any more questions, look in the chat. You can email us. And happy homebrewing, and get out there and use all kinds of stuff.
Thanks,
Please
everyone.
reach out if you have any
All right.
questions. Thanks.
Take care.